Wall Street Unplugged looks beyond the regular headlines heard on mainstream financial media to bring you unscripted interviews and breaking commentary direct from Wall Street right to you on Main Street.
What's going out there? It's August 29th. I'm Frank Curzio, host of the Wall Street Unplugged podcast, where I break down the headlines and tell you what's really moving these markets. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. He was an environmentalist, and he's a good friend. Love the guy. Hung out with him in the past. But as I'm talking to him, I started to realize how much I hate environmentalists. I know saying that publicly is probably going to get me in trouble. Let me clear it up first. Because it's not that I hate our planet or want to make, don't want to make our environment more safe for future generations. I think we're all in there. We're all in favor of green initiatives. I mean, if they make sense, like lowering carbon emissions on cars, which is, we're doing a pretty good job of it, right? We're down 10, 15% over the past 10, 12 years or so. Smart cities where, we're using less electricity, less water, becoming more efficient using technologies, right? That's pretty cool for the environment, for everybody. Clean electricity, whether it's natural gas or nuclear, which I know everybody hates nuclear, just it's the cleanest energy out there, compared to coal. Because I tell you, I've been in Beijing. And until you go to Beijing, you really understand, like, the quality of air. I mean, you take things for granted. Like in the U.S., we take water for granted, right? Because we all have clean water. When you go to third world countries, they don't have clean water there. We're all pissed off about traffic and, I got to, on your phone, and, our pages aren't downloading quick on the internet and stuff like that. There's people out there that don't have access to clean water. We take a lot of things for granted. Our air is pretty cool here, but when you go to Beijing, man, I was there for a week. I don't know how it is all the time, but you could not see the sun. It was all hazy and foggy, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, the cars have like a thin filter. It's almost like a clay or dirt on them, and you could feel it when you breathe. You feel it. Like it's almost like a humidity, and it's like, you take a deep breath. It's insane. And I'm all for it. I agree with it. Yeah, but environmentalists, I mean, if you give them an inch, they're going to take 20 miles, right? I mean, it's crazy. Again, I'm going to be on an island by myself saying this. I'm probably going to get a ton of emails, but I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people that are going to be in the same camp as me here. You're not allowed to say it, right? It's almost like you can't be a Trump supporter. If you are, it means you're a racist. It means you hate women and everything just because you like certain policies that Trump has that support you, right? It's the same thing with environmentalists. They can't say anything bad or getting in trouble. But I think all of us are in favor of the environment. But when I look at things like take Al Gore, for instance, right? I mean, this is Inconvenient Truth is why. It came out like 2006. And I like what he did in terms of presenting, like, these are our problems. This is why we have to be concerned and shedding light on it. Like, I like that part. The part I don't like is where you go up there and you scare the crap out of everyone, right? Which celebrities bought in like crazy. They don't know the real truth behind the Inconvenient Truth, right? I'm going to tell you in a minute. But here's a guy that predicted in 2006 that the Arctic Ocean is going to be ice-free today. Sea levels will rise by 20 feet. They've barely risen, guys. Polar bears are going to come near extinct, right? Because, they're all going to drown. This is from Al Gore. When you look at the facts today, sea levels in the Arctic, are they rising? Barely, but they're rising. It is a concern, absolutely, but barely rising. So to get to the 20 feet that Gore predicted, it would take, and this is science talking, over 200 years based on what we've seen in the rise over the past 10. It'll take over 200 years to come to that prediction. Back in 2006, man, I mean, that was huge. Inconvenient Truth. Everybody was watching it going, oh, wow, our planet. And remember, Leonardo DiCaprio, those guys, again, they don't look at facts. They're just like, hey, which is crazy. But I think it was great, right? You brought awareness to it. But did you really have to scare the crap out of everybody and have these insane projections? What we see in stocks today, right? You're going to die. I mean, think about it. How many crash reports have we seen over the past 5-6 years? The dollar's going to crash. Gold's going to be the standard. Get your gold buried in your backyard. If you did that, you're getting destroyed over the past 6-7 years. Destroyed. And the market's at an all-time high, keeps going higher. You say, well, the market's going to correct it. Our debt levels, we're not that expensive in stocks. Yeah, it could correct 10, 15%, but think how much you miss just by listening to some crazy guy who has an agenda, who wants to sell you something, more newsletters or whatever. Fear sells. If you want to make a point, just don't make a point. If you especially want marketing, you want to generate business, create fear around that point, and you'll make a fortune. So again, Al Gore focusing on environment, I get it. But they really have to scare the shit out of everyone and make these crazy predictions that are ridiculous now, because now he comes out with his next movie, which is Inconvenient Truth, sequel it's called, released last year. How can you take anyone seriously, especially when you look behind the scenes? Because Gore was lobbying for cap and trade legislation. So basically, companies would have to pay more money the more CO2 they use, and if they had extra CO2 that they didn't use, they could sell credits and trade them through an exchange, which would be the Chicago Climate Exchange, which, of course, Gore had a significant stake in, right? So if this was passed, and then you're scaring the hell out of everybody, right, to get the public behind your agenda, this guy makes a fortune, and he's very, very, very rich. Al Gore's a brilliant guy. I don't want to knock him too much because he put Silver Springs Network on the map, which is a company that we invested in Curzio Venture Opportunities last year that got taken over. Loved it. I don't know if you're familiar with Silver Springs, but provide the software systems, hardware to make electricity more efficient for cities. So the smart cities platform, basically, they build electricity companies for cities and stuff like that. It was just a fantastic investment, and it got taken over at a 50% plus premium a few months after we recommended it, Curzio Venture. And Al Gore had a lot to do with that, early investor in that company. But if we look at the stats, in the 25 years since the beginning of the modern environmental movement, right, the United States has spent more than $1 trillion to address environmental threats that are caused by commercial activities, right? So I'm quoting that. Threats caused by commercial activity. That's a lot of money, $1 trillion. And again, I think we're all for these initiatives, but as an environmentalist, that's a lot of money you can get a hold of and get your hands on. And no one's going to really say anything about you, right? I mean, did Al Gore, did his credibility get damaged? No. He's out there, he just made another movie. He's making a fortune. You're really not allowed to come at these guys, right? Because they're predicting the environment. But when you really look, I mean, so many of these guys have an agenda that it's insane. I mean, even with the EPA, and I mean, it's used as a scare tactic that they just throw at different companies regardless of facts. And I've seen that firsthand with a company with Northern Dynasty, saying that, their project is going to hurt the sockeye salmon, which is, 100 miles away because of the rivers that flow through their property. They don't have rivers on their property. I was standing on the property. There's no rivers. Come up with a different excuse. Come up with anything. But here's a company that just wanted to create it, spend, what was it, close to $100 million on studies from third-party environmentalists just to show these studies and say, here, this is what you need to look at. This is why it's not going to hurt the environment. This is why we're going to help Alaska and these people around us. Instead of them paying a fortune for all kinds of goods and everything, this is our chance to help these people, to create a community. And when the EPA says, you know what, I don't even want to look at what you wrote. Holy cow. I mean, they could look at it and totally disagree and say, no, we don't. That's fine. But to not even look, it's like an FDA study, right? You have an FDA study, it's in phase 1, and you're like, wow, this is great. Here's our phase. And our government, FDA, is like, I don't even want to look at it. I just don't think that's going to work. We don't even want to look at the data. How insane is that? The agenda around this stuff is incredible, where I think we're all in agreement, where we all want a safer planet. We all want kids to breathe healthy air and become, and love when presidents say that. It sounds so presidential. Our kids to breathe clean air and their generations in front of you, whatever. I think we're all on the same page. But when we see stuff like this, it's kind of crazy. And again, I'm not citing anything that's new. But maybe I'm just thinking, $1 trillion, maybe instead of creating, water bottles that are eco-friendly but don't stand up and spill all over the place, maybe instead of creating smart washing machines with hundreds of electrical components now that are eco-friendly, but they last 4 years, maybe 5 years. I mean, I had my house for 9 years here, 8 years, and I have 2 wash machines, and this one I'm going to start having problems with. It's just, starting to act funny. Remember those old wash machines that shook the whole house? The whole house, like my mom had one of those. 20, 25 years, same wash machine, everything's okay. But the environment, we got to make everything different. So the products are horrible now, but they're, you have a water bottle, it's going to spill all over the place because they don't stand up, because they're environmental plastic, whatever you're using. But it's crazy. I mean, look at these stuff. Reusable napkins that scratch your face. I mean, is this $1 trillion that's going into protecting our environment? It's crazy. And we can focus on making products that are eco-friendly, but how about that they're still actually good products for consumers to use? And for environmentalists out there, stop trying to scare the world into thinking we have 10 years before the planet's going to get destroyed. Everyone's going to die. It's not true. Do we need to focus on it now? Yes. But if you have a clearer message instead of trying to scare the hell out of people because you have money in an exchange that's going to be trading carbon credits, and so you make up all of this BS, crazy predictions. I mean, come on. Polar bears still running around, guys. They're not all gone. They're cool. They're having fun, making babies. Everything's fine. There's still ice in the Arctic. But it's just amazing when you look because, and why am I telling you this, right? I'm not just ranting because, and this came from not just talking to a friend environmentalist who's out there, and also the fact that 2 days ago I had a water bottle just spill all over my desk because it literally doesn't stand up because of the plastic. But you have to think about things that are being said today, like tariffs. We pounded the table on I said, guys, don't worry. It's a non-factor. Millions of stories came out about this. I've been destroyed, even on friends' podcasts and everything. What do you mean tariffs aren't a big deal? The trade war, it's going to crush our country. It's not a big deal. It really wasn't a big deal. And if you take the tariffs that have been initiated or even raised, and you look at the tax benefits we have from tax reforms, it's a massive benefit still. Maybe it's 10% decline in profits compared to, a 30% decline. So, a net decline of 20, 25%, whatever it is. But when you look at the numbers, and I've analyzed the numbers for cars, for everything, Harley Davidson is going to complain a little bit. You have some companies that are going to complain a little bit. But overall, for U.S. investors, it's a non-story. Just like the inconvenient truth was a non-story. It could have been great if you really just focused on and made everyone aware. But the fact that, Al Gore has a huge stake in creating an exchange to trade carbon credits, and that's the basis of it, and making these crazy false claims. You look at newsletters now that predict, seriously, 50, 60%, the market's going to crash, and you're a retiree that just went through the credit crisis. You saw your house go down 35%, and you saw your 401k decline by 40, 50%. You're 70, 75 going, wow, am I going to have to work again? It's pretty easy to scare the hell out of that person. They're going to buy whatever you're selling. If I'm telling you that you're going to lose everything, take your money out of banks. Just be careful of the predictions. We're in a market right now that's totally insane where they inflate every story because we have 24-hour news services. So they have to inflate every little thing. The NAFTA deal. NAFTA deal's moving the markets. This is moving the markets. That's moving the markets. And the markets are up like, a couple of points. 0.02%. They have to come up with a reason. If it's down 0.02%, they're going to come up with a reason and say this is hurting the markets today when it's just trading. But sorry to go on about the rant environmentalists because you're not allowed to talk bad about this stuff, right? I mean, it's almost like I'm going to have a black cloud over me for the rest of my life because I said that. Again, I'm for the planet, just things that are reasonable, and don't lie to us when you have an agenda. Okay, because there are serious issues out there that people care about, but now this gets lost because maybe the inconvenient truth, the sequel, you might have some really good stuff in there. I wouldn't even go near that because I know you have an agenda. Anyway, going to end that rant here. Sorry about that. Anyway, it's just it just feels good. It feels good to have this podcast to be able to rant. Some people complain, oh, Frank, at the beginning you rant too much. I'm telling you, it's really good. It's like therapy for me. It helps out. So, and again, it's a free podcast. So you can always fast forward through this part, listen to other podcasts, whatever you guys feel like, which is cool. I love you guys. And I know most of you listen. For the stock advice, which we're going to get to right next, I got a great interview coming up, very special. And someone who's been a mentor to me, which is really cool because, as you know, my dad passed away 15 years ago. So for me, I never really had a mentor. Just was driven by that fact, trying to fulfill kind of my dad's dream with everything, with the newsletter industry, which he's been in for 30 years. And so far, we're off to a pretty good start. And this is a person that really helped me. So I really never had a mentor after he passed. But, over the past few years, a few people have helped me out tremendously, giving me great advice and advice that was always truthful. So it's not what I wanted to hear. Like, this is a person that told me you're not ready to start a business yet about 3 years ago. He was right. And the following year, he's like, now you're ready. You know, it was different. It was just coming off of Stansberry and, a lot of moving parts and stuff like that. So, but it was just amazing that these are the people that are going to tell you that want to help you the most. And to do that, they're not going to tell you what you want to hear. They're not going to pat you on the back all the time. They're going to be critical of things that you do. And those are like your good friends. And this person's been that to me. His name is Van Simmons, who is a legend in the rare coin industry, co-founder of Professional Coin Grading Service, which is the largest coin grader in the world. He's graded and certified over 30 million coins over the past 30 years. And this is a person I used to go visit every single year, and I haven't done that in the past 2.5 years because I've been so busy with my business. But he's in California, and I used to go there, and he would take me everywhere to buy collectibles, paintings, sports memorabilia, introduce him to his best contacts, where now collectibles count probably for about 7-8% of my entire portfolio, my total assets. So someone's helped me tremendously. It's going to be a great interview. The Van's going to break down the rules you need to follow before buying collectibles. And it's interesting because his number one rule is something you will never hear anywhere, and it's fantastic. Trust me. I'm not selling this. It's great. He's also going to share some pretty cool stories with you since his clientele includes some of the richest people in the world. You're going to cheeks that fly into California, Southern California, just to get things graded by him and his company. And more important, he's going to provide several ideas, including some of his favorite rare coins that are going for incredible discounts right now, and some of them you could get a hold of. You could buy right now, which is really, really cool. So after this interview, you're going to see why Van is such a great source that I'm sharing with you and why I'm real lucky to have him as a close friend. Then after the interview, I'm going to talk more about diversification. And when I say diversification, I'm talking about out of U.S. stocks. A lot of us are doing well on U.S. stocks, but we know this bull run's been going on for a long time. Van is going to talk about, rare coins, different collectibles, things to look at, but I'm going to give you other asset classes that you should be thinking about right now just to diversify. I know diversify is a boring word and we hear it all the time. I'm not talking about taking 40% out of your portfolio and just putting in all kinds of alternative asset classes, but I'm going to give you a couple of ideas that make sense. That with the money you've made in the stock market, even money that you've made on newsletters and stuff like that, it would give you a really good idea. And you're going to see why I'm going to provide statistics behind it of why you should be diversifying, especially right now where stocks are on an 8-9 year bull run, the biggest bull run in history, which is going to continue. I think it's going to continue for a little bit. But I am worried going forward. I think it makes sense right now to maybe take some money, a little bit out of these stocks and go into some of these alternative asset classes. So it's going to be a fantastic educational segment. And before I get to that, let's get to my interview with the legendary Van Simmons. Van Simmons, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast.
Thank you.
I think that, wow, maybe it's been a few years since the last time I interviewed. So I want to catch up and get the audience caught up with exactly who you are, because you're someone that's been very important in my life, someone that mentored me, especially with telling me when to start my business and what to focus on and things like that. But you're just a guy that's behind the scenes that it's probably been at least 2 years since I interviewed you. So I'd like to start off with you telling us your story, because you collected coins and collectibles all your life. And it was always a way, I think, what you told me, it's bringing accountability, honestly, to a market that seemed to be in dire need of it. Talk about that story of what made you start a professional coin grading service, and it's grown tremendously now on eBay and things like that. And PCGS is everywhere. But talk a little bit about that story and why you created it.
Well, in the collectibles business, it's sort of the dealer tells you what you're buying, and you're kind of stuck with that. And one morning, my business partner and I, David Hall, got together and sat down. We were having breakfast, and he made a comment. He goes, I made a comment, why can we buy coins from this dealer and that dealer, and we get them and they're correctly graded, but we get them from other dealers and they're not correctly graded. And the next morning we met for breakfast again, which we used to do back then when we were young. And then he says, why don't we start our own coin grading service? So we sat down and came up with what we were trying to create was just a level playing field for collectors. So when they purchase something, they would purchase it in one grade, and when they went to sell it back, it was the same grade, which is a problem with diamonds and stuff like that. I mean, or not so much diamonds, but it seems like whenever you buy something and you take it back, oh, geez, no, it's not quite as nice as they said it was. And this took away that problem. It made a level playing field for collectors, and that's what we wanted. The other thing is back in the mid 80s when we did this. It's hard to believe it's been open now about 34 years. You would have people who were wealthy people who wanted to buy rare coins but weren't willing to spend money because they weren't guaranteed of the grade. Now, I said to David, I go, there's guys sitting in Beverly Hills or downtown Manhattan that have millions of dollars that want to spend it on the rare coin market, but they don't feel comfortable. So what we did is we grouped together 5 of the world's experts on coins and came up with a consensus grade, and each coin back then was looked at 3 or 4 times by 3 or 4 different people would look at each coin to verify it. There was an agreement on the grade, and they were the best in the world. And so it was one of those things. As soon as it opened, the coin industry hated it, but the world loved it. Guys like Gary North, who used to write a financial newsletter, and Ari McMaster and guys like that, all wrote it up back in the 80s. Howard Ruff and stuff like that, because it gave people a level playing field. And it exploded very quickly. Within 60 days, it would take 6 months to get a coin graded. We were in the black the first month and have been ever since. So it was just something that we created to make the market a better place for the buyers, which in the long run makes it a better place for the businesses too. And it expanded the marketplace quite a bit. But I'm a collector of a lot of things, and coins were one, that I always had problems with. Whenever I bought a coin, it was one grade. Whenever I went to sell it, it was another grade. So, and since then, there's been, tons of copycat grading services, some good, some bad. But the coins graded by our company still sell for the highest prices because the grading standards are still the strictest.
Van, you said something interesting there, how a lot of people were kind of ticked off, right, at the beginning. I guess these were dealers that were making money, doing it the wrong way, right? We'll say in a nice way, I'll say that. But, I mean, that feedback must have been tough because a lot of people on this podcast actually, will start their own businesses and you're going to disrupt different things. But when you disrupt different things, and like you did, and you said it immediately, you saw the gains within 60 days and you've been to black ever since. And we'll get some of those numbers, guys, which are remarkable. But when you disrupt something like that, and maybe, you've talked to so many people who've come to you for advice and young entrepreneurs and stuff like that. When you disrupt something, it's never really fun, right? I mean, because you're going to get so much backlash from, I guess, the people who've been doing it a certain way. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because it's surprising and it's not surprising, but you could see a lot of people coming at you saying, hey, what are you doing with this market here? And all of a sudden, this thing grew tremendously, and now look what you guys have. But, just by basically doing the right thing, right?
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, disrupting the market, because prior to PCGS, what we did is we sat down and said, our coins are fine. Why don't people say what they're willing to pay for coins and sell for coins? So we did big advertisements in the coin journals and stuff back then it came out one day saying, David Hall Rare Coins, Van Simmons and David are now, we'll give you a bid ask on your coins. We'll tell you what we'll buy them for. We'll tell you what we'll sell them for. And we guarantee to buy them back at the same grade. And I mean, I remember going to a coin show, and one of the largest dealers at the time out of the Bay Area said to me, he goes, Van, you're going to go bankrupt. You can't do this. And I started laughing. I said, why? I'm just making a two-way market. I said, people want to be able to know what they can sell their product for when they go to sell it. They want to make sure I'm going to be there to buy it. I said, I'm always happy to buy the stuff back. I realized, Frank, I've been in business almost 40 years as a business partner with David. And, we've always bought back our products. So it wasn't to us a big deal. But, man, a lot of the dealers just absolutely hated it. And then it wasn't shortly after that we had the Federal Trade Commission come after us and do all this investigation and stuff, saying we're selling a security. No, that was the SEC. And it was like, we're not selling security. We're just guaranteeing to buy it'd be just like you buying a piece of furniture and the dealer saying, hey, I'll buy it back at any time. Just call me. I'll give you a price. That's all we were doing, was creating a liquid marketplace. So in 86, when we actually opened the doors, February of 86 on PCGS, then we were guaranteeing a grade. In other words, PCGS will guarantee this grade as a third-party authenticator. It wasn't Van and David. It was this third-party grading company. And, then, of course, we had dealers turn us in to different companies, Federal Trade Commission stuff, and they did the biggest investigations and walked away saying, okay, it's all good. You guys aren't doing anything wrong. You're just trying to make a level playing field for the marketplace. And that's all we've really tried to do for 40 years.
Wow, that's incredible. It's funny because when you do the right thing, you have to deal with more regulatory authorities than anybody, right?
Well, especially when all your best friends turn you in. When you find out, it's like, this is ridiculous. But there's a lot of envy in this world, and it changes sometimes when you create something that may disrupt somebody's apple cart, as you said earlier. So.
No, that definitely makes sense. And I want to go over numbers real quick before we move on here, because professional coin grading service, and I read someplace, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I want you to give us the numbers on eBay as well, guys, because it's not just coins. We're going to get into cards and collectibles and everything and pick fans' mind here. But I read someplace it's well over 30 million coins that professional coin service certified over the last 30 something years. I mean, you probably have an updated figure, might be even 35 million by now. I mean, is that accurate? And talk about the statistics on eBay, which I think a lot of people would be surprised with as well.
Well, in '86, when we started grading coins, we thought if we could do a couple thousand coins a month, it would be a great deal. I think now we do about 130 to 160,000 coins every month, and I'm pretty sure the figure we've graded as far as coins, and this is off the back of my back here, is probably around 35 million coins we've graded. And that's over 33, 34 years. So, it's been or 33 years, it's been a very successful business. And then I think it was 92, we started PSA, which stands for Professional Sports Authenticators. PCGS stands for Professional Coin Grading Service. PSA is Professional Sports Authenticators. And that was a similar deal. We were in the baseball card business in the early 80s, making a buy-sell market on baseball cards. And it was hilarious because Sports Collectors Digest at the time printed an article with this money changer, a cartoon of a money changer sitting at a table throwing money up in the air like this sorcerer. And it says, guess who's getting in to ruin our hobby, talking about the baseball card market. And it said, Van Simmons and David Hall, who've always promoted the highest quality rare coins, are now saying they're going to promote the highest quality baseball cards, and they're a good investment, and it's going to be bad for the business and everything else. So I think the coin grading service, we have about 1,400 or 1,500 authorized dealers worldwide who sell our coins. We have offices in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and the United States and Paris for grading coins. Cards, we're all in the United States, but I know we're looking at opening an office in Japan because there's a big market in some of these Pokemon cards and sports cards and stuff like that are going on over there. I think we have about 1,200 authorized baseball card dealers, sports cards dealers, not just baseball, but sports cards. And I'm not sure how much. I think we grade about 150,000 cards every month also. So I know we're about a month backlogged in just opening packages, for baseball cards and sports cards that come into the place to get graded. And as far as eBay, I don't know the exact figures now, but I know 3 or 4 years ago I saw some guy walking to the office, and I said, who are you? He says, well, I work for eBay. And I said, what do you do here? He goes, well, so much of your product between your coins and your cards sells on eBay. He goes, and, so my job is to come down here every quarter and see what eBay can help you with and stuff like that. And then I said, there's a lot of our stuff sell on eBay. And he goes, yeah, PSA, Professional Sports Authenticator, at the time was the #1 search item on eBay. And then a year later, I saw him again, and I asked him again, and we were in a board of directors meeting, and he came in. And I said, tell these guys what you said. And it ended up where one of the board members says, well, how much of our stuff sells on eBay? And he looks down at this graph or this chart. He says, well, you have to realize about 95% of the cards listed on eBay aren't graded. Of the ones that are graded, about 95 or 99% of them are graded by your company and sell. He goes, well, how many is that? And he goes, 1,230. And we're sitting there scratching our heads, and I look, I'm like, what, 1,230 cards a year sell on eBay, or $1,230 a year? What are you talking about? He goes, no, 1,230 baseball cards or sports cards graded and certified by your company sell on eBay every hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we all about fell out of our chair. So it's a real wide marketplace, the sports cards market and the coin market, because there's so many buyers. Wow, there is a big difference between the two markets. The coin dealers always have the money to buy stuff. The baseball card dealers sometimes don't. But the coin market and stuff is very, very liquid. Did that explain that well enough for you?
That was great. That's an incredible story. And by the way, guys, having Van talk about this is difficult because Van is always a humble guy. So I love the fact that you're sharing these stats with us because it's amazing. But what I want to really show you guys is credibility here, because this is a great market. You want to learn from someone who's a professional, and you need someone that you trust. And in this industry, there's not a lot that I've got burnt before that I know you've got burnt before. So when you find someone that trusts, it's really important. And now that you've had this, success and that you've grown, and I don't want you to give any names of clients because we've talked about this in the past, but I mean, since you're the standard in the industry, that has to lead to some of the richest, most wealthiest people getting things graded by you. And we're not just talking about baseball cards and coins, but also maybe stamps and different things. I mean, have you seen clients come just fly right in from other countries and just to visit you to grade stuff? I mean, because some of the stories that you shared was fantastic. But I don't know if you're allowed to share some of the names, but it is pretty interesting that your clientele.
No, I mean there's a large collector base out there. We had a guy a couple of years ago flew in as a chef, and I think he had a staff of 6 or 8 guys with him who were taking care of all of his paperwork and all of his coins to be graded and things like that. And it's the same thing in the baseball card business. We used to grade stamps, but it was one of the products that we tried and couldn't make. There's 2 different companies. There's David Hall Rare Coins, and then there's Collectors Universe, which is a grading and authentication company, which I took public in 1999. And I still sit on the board, and it's a great public company. That's the grading authentication company. The company David Hall's Rare Coins, I'm very challenged on my marketing. As you know, I don't do any marketing, and I'm down to a staff of about 4 or 5 employees. I don't have any commission salespeople trying to call people and sell stuff to them. That shows you how stupid I am, because people want to buy things. I just don't have anybody to. It's hard for me to find the coins that I like that I want to sell. It's not hard to find the clients as hard as it is to find the nice product.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So I guess let's transition here into so new people getting into this market, and they always want to collect. And my friends are always buying stuff. They're like, wow, I want to buy a LeBron jersey that's signed. And for me, knowing and what you've taught me over the past probably a good 6, 7, 8 years now, there's certain things that you want to buy in terms of value. Like if you like LeBron James and you want his jersey, that's fine, but just don't expect to be worth a lot of money, because as you told me, he could sign 50 billion jerseys, right? So could you talk about what you look for in particular? Because and I want to stress the word rare, because that's what I've learned from you. It's rare. It's something that can't be duplicated. But talk about that process of someone that wants to start collecting things and have a 30, 40-year time frame where you're going to leave this stuff to your kids. What should they look for in terms of things that have the potential to go up in value compared to, there's a big misconception out there where maybe they could, they want to buy like a LeBron jersey, a Magic Johnson jersey and sign and think that might be worth something 15, 20 years from now.
Well, the main thing is you buy what you like to begin with. Okay, that doesn't mean it's going to go up in value, but it always helps if you like it. Because if you like it for some reason, whether it's an old rare coin or a new LeBron jersey, somewhere down the line, somebody else is probably going to like it because it has a certain appeal to it. I'm not a big fan of buying new products. I get calls all the time on the new issues and stuff that the U.S. Mint makes, and people say, don't you think these are a good deal? And I go, well, everything I sell is kind of prior to World War II. And they go, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, some of these new products are limited and this and that, but they're all saved. And it usually takes 20, 30, 40 years before something becomes a collectible and has a big following. And, I'm not going to be here in 30 or 40 years. You're not going to be here in 30 or 40 years. Well, you're a young puppy, but you have to look at reality. I mean, I was looking at putting a roof on my house, and I was talking to a guy about a 40-year roof guarantee, and he started laughing. He goes, Van, you're not going to be here in 40 years. Well, you care. And my perspective changes over a period of time. So I tend to look at older things that I think have a track record of being a collectible. You want to buy something that's older. You want to buy something that's popular, that people like. And there's certain coins that have always been popular. And let's take a Morgan dollar in MS65, which is probably a $130 coin. You look at that and you think, this coin's $130 in brilliant uncirculated mint state 65, which is a high grade. And you're talking about something that's 150 years old, struck in the United States, made out of pure silver for $135. That's pretty cheap. You can't buy an old spoon for that. And so I try and find things that are popular. That's one of it I like. And then when you move into rarer things, there's all different price levels for different people. People who are big hitters and want to spend a lot of money. Like I have one friend, I think Forbes lists him at $4 or $5 billion now. And he's been a friend for 25, 30 years. And he said to me years ago, he goes, "What should I buy?" I said, "Well, it's your money. You can buy whatever you want." And he goes, "No, what would you buy?" I said, "I'd buy things that make a difference. Buy things that are collectible, but buy things that are really great pieces of history, that people want to own. They wanted to own them 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and they're going to want to own them 30 or 40 or 50 years from now." So just finding the right product, and that's one of the hardest things to do, is find something that makes a difference. That
Yeah, no,
answer that question, or I get lost? I
yeah,
get
no,
very
that's great
distracted.
advice.
You should have
I
warned all your people I have a bad case of ADD, so I get distracted all over the place. So,
No, you know what? That was an answer I wasn't expecting. Like, buy something that you like, and it's so true, right? Because
oh,
even when it
sure.
comes to art and things like that, that you've helped me with tremendously. When I come visit you, and unfortunately I haven't done it a couple of years, been so busy with my business, but I used to visit you once a year, and this is, I think, 3 straight years where you took me to different your sources to buy paintings, and I basically told you, look, I'm looking to buy stuff that I do like, that I want to, basically to my family, and maybe something that's cool. But it's interesting that you said buy something that you like, because I could see people buying a lot of things they don't like just because they think it might go up in value. And again, when you have a coin, maybe it might not be your thing where you're sticking in a drawer, but a painting is something that's on your wall. It's beautiful to look at all the time, and who knows what it would be valued at maybe 20, 30 years from now. But I guess, and I'll stay on this really quick. What are some of the things, or the craziest things that you ever collected that maybe that you've made money on? Because I know that you've collected one of the most rare stamps that you showed me when I was at your office. But also, there's so many things. It's Indian rugs, I believe. I think it was different knives, that rare collectible knives and stuff like that. But what are some of the things that you've collected that that would surprise people, I guess?
Well, you're going to get me really lost here, because I like things, as you know, Frank, that are handmade, that somebody actually took a skill and made. I mean, now everybody buys Legos and things like this, that these plastic things that pop out of machines. But when you look at old handmade things, one of the reasons I like pocket knives is because there's several hundred steps to making each knife, and you're going back in the late 1800s and the early into the mid 1900s. On pocket knives. I mean, we all carried case pocket knives or Remington pocket knives. Back in the days, everybody carried pocket knives in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Remington at one point was shipping 10,000 knives a day. So, I like to buy those in mint condition, and it's hard to find nice knives, and they seem very inexpensive. So you go out and you buy a knife for, let's say, $150, $200, or $3,000. And the thing may be 100 years old in perfect condition. To me, there's a lot of value there. I can hold something in my hand and say, man, I got a lot of value sitting here in my hand. And I don't know the price sometimes, but I can tell the quality. And so when you look at pocket knives and you say, this thing's only $500 or whatever the number may be, that part shocks me. I like the Navajo rugs you were talking about. I like the Navajo things and the American Indian things, the weavings and things like that, because the American Indians are now opening all these casinos, and they're not paying tax, a lot of them, on the money, because they don't have to pay tax, because they're their own sovereign nation. And a lot of them are very spiritual people. And my father-in-law was buried on an Indian reservation in the Hopi Nation. So they're very spiritual people, and a lot of them are getting money now and going back and trying to buy their ancestry and collectibles and things from the time period when their parents and grandparents grew up. The thing I like about a Navajo, well, you can look at a piece of Navajo pottery that may be $10,000, and some lady made it in a day or two. But you can look at a weaving, let's say a rug, and some lady may have worked on it for 2 years, and it's the same price or less money. I mean, a Navajo rug can be a couple $1,000s. It can be $250,000. Just depends on the time period. There's different time periods, stuff from the 1850s and 1860s, and then the 70s and 80s, and 1890s to 1910 is kind of a transitional area. They all sell at different price ranges. But there again, you're going back to handmade products. And then you have this huge following of collectors who are starting to buy the things. So I've done well on the Indian baskets and stuff and Indian weavings that I've purchased over the years. The Indian weavings, I guess if I figured it all out, I'd probably break even, because I sell them to a lot of my friends, and I just sell them at what I paid. And so I haven't done that well on them, because I end up selling them to friends. But, it's a very collectible market that I like quite a bit. Then the other thing I collect, which your readers, I'm sure listeners have never heard of, are Indian piece medals. And if you look at these old images of Indians, courier knives, images and prints and stuff, they have these big silver medallions hanging around their neck. Well, those were made by the U.S. Mint. I'm in the coin business, so it makes sense that I would buy something struck by the U.S. Mint. And they were made for different presidents. And the first ones, there were some handmade ones made for George Washington, but the first ones were actually, production-wise, were made for Thomas Jefferson. They were made in 1801. If you read a book on Thomas Jefferson, it talks about him giving the Indian peace medals to Lewis and Clark, and Lewis and Clark would go out on their expeditions and travel across the United States, and they would meet with different Indian tribes, and they'd do land treaties, and they'd do peace treaties and things like that, and then they'd present these Indian chiefs with different silver medals, and one would have the image of the president on the front. The back would say friendship and peace. It would have a tomahawk and a peace pipe struck into it, and then it would have two hands shaking hands. And these are pieces of history that if you ask 9 out of 10 coin dealers, they don't even know what they are. I mean, they're really, really rare because they were so prized by the Indians. Almost all of them were buried with their peace medals. I mean, it was a big sign of something that they had done something great with or for the U.S. government. And I think they're one of the most collectible, underpriced things. I look at some things and I go, why is this $15,000 and not $50,000? And a couple of years ago, somebody talked to me and I did an interview and I recommended peace medals as something. And 6 months later, there was a couple of peace medals that came up in an auction, and I talked to the auction company, and he says, well, somebody's been recommending peace medals. We've got about 6 new buyers, and the prices have doubled, which I started laughing. I go, well, that was me. I should keep my mouth shut. And then the market has come back a little bit, because they bought what they wanted. That was several years ago, and now the market's come back in price a little bit. But I did find a couple of coin dealers recently who were starting to put them away quite a bit. And some of the bronze ones that were made for collectors back I'm talking about 1830s, 40s, 50s, in brand new condition, they're $1,000 or $2,000. The silver ones started about $10,000 for nice ones and go up. But very rare, very collectible. One of the most desirable things that I think people can own as far as great pieces and parts of the U.S. history. So I like to buy things that have kind of a dual collector base. You have coin collectors who buy them. You have Indian peace medal collectors or people who and collect things of like Civil War and things like that. And then you have people who collect the American Indians who are starting to come in and buy these things themselves. Now, I have not had any American Indians come in and try and buy them, but I know for a fact they bought them because they bought them from a couple of guys who I buy from. I've got some dealers who I sell some stuff to, and they'll tell me, the chief of this tribe is trying to put together a set or something. So very, very collectible. A lot of this stuff, people don't realize the collectibles. And I don't know if I should, a friend of mine, Richard Mayberry, who writes a newsletter, he calls this stuff endurables, rare coins, stamps, things that people want because money gets tight and people have something to sell or they have something of value. And a lot of times the endurables that people have right now in Venezuela is making some people wealthy down there while everybody else is losing their butt, because their currency continues to get devalued and everything else. And, I think that, most of the people vastly underestimated the power of quantitative easing and, didn't understand what was really going on. And I think we have a much greater danger now of people not understanding what quantitative tightening is doing. And, they're tightening the money supply and stuff. And people are now trying to get out of dollars to a large degree and buy something that, like I said, my one friend who's worth billions, he says, Van, I'm just trying to buy something that in 30 or 40 years is going to have value and desirability no matter what the currency of the realm is at the time. Because, the dollar just continues to go down. I don't mean to say I'm assuming that, my feeling is that at some point the dollar is going to go down. And I think right now the risk of not owning something, whether it be gold, silver, or endurables, collectibles, is a much greater risk than not owning it. People go, I don't know if I should own gold. It went down $12. And it just becomes laughable at some point because, in 5 or 10 years, it could be a completely different story. And the endurable products, I'll tell you a great story. Years ago, I had a guy in my office, real strong German descent and strong German accent. He was a retired physician, and we were talking about collectibles, and his friend was with him and said, what are these rare coins going to do if we have a vast depression? I mean, this stuff's going to be worthless. There's not going to be any money to buy it. And he stomped his hand on my desk in a strong German accent. He goes, no, you're wrong. He goes, my father supported a family, and I don't remember if it was 6 people for 10 years or 10 people for 6 years on his rare coin and rare stamp collection. I go, what do you mean? He goes, there were always wealthy people in Europe, Switzerland, and everybody else who had money. And when times were tough, they had a lot of money, and they were willing to pay more than the stuff was normally worth because they wanted out of their money. They wanted out of cash. They wanted an endurable. They wanted something that was going to hold value, which I think was one of the best stories I ever heard.
No,
Sorry
that is incredible.
I get accused of not telling long stories. I apologize for that.
No, it's great. And I can tell you guys from knowing Van for a very long time, for me, you can see the history aspect, and I'm always learning something new from you, which is incredible. And again, you've been an amazing source. Once again, we're talking to Van Simmons. Now, I want to, and fantastic stories. Now I built that up because I want to talk about people who may contact you or contact someone else that wants to get into collectibles and things like that. And let's talk about gold and silver, right? And the coin market, because I know it's been a little bit slow, and that's expected in the conferences that you and I attend. Well, especially that you attend, a lot of mining conferences, and I have to say, those guys are pretty close to jumping off buildings right now, and I mean that in the nicest way possible because it's a market that's really been guys like Rick Rule, Jeff Phillips, who's a friend of ours, great friend of yours, Van. If you talk to Eric Sprotz of the world, they'll tell you that this is one of the worst markets they've seen in 4 decades. I mean, this is coming from them. That's how bad it's been. But I want to ask you about the coin market, and maybe you could also get into a little bit of the collectible coins, because you were talking about an MS-60 7 or 8 before. But I just want to talk about the grading scale from 0 to 70, and also even before maybe we get into that. But could we talk about demand in the marketplace? Because it's probably slow from the conferences that you've been at. Obviously, you have gold coming down and things like that. But how does this compare to other markets? And has this been a great buying opportunity if you compare this time, which may be a little bit different, historically, when you've seen really bear markets in this, and usually the best time to buy things when nobody wants them, right?
Yeah, if they're quality products. Right now, the world is like awash with money. There's a lot of cash out there in certain areas, certainly in Wall Street and stuff. And I don't think people really realize, and I was telling my son this the other day, who works with me. He's one of my 4 or 5 employees. I mean, we're in a world of irredeemable paper money right now. And I mean, the state of affairs is just unprecedented any time in history. I mean, there's never been so much just printed money out of thin air like there is right now. So, if you look at that part, then you say, okay, is this going to continue to hold value? I kind of doubt it. So when you look at commodities, I tend to like commodities quite a bit. I think that I like things that are oversold. I think that area of the market is tremendously oversold. Does that mean I think gold's going to run up in price to $1 million next month? No. Do I think gold could run to, $13.20, $13.50 in the next 30, 60 days? Sure, without any trouble at all. Then we could see $100 or $200 pullback to $11.50 or $11.75, and then it could go off again. But we're in a trading range right now in the metals where everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. You have Trump in office who's changing everything so drastically, nobody can even keep up. Like the guy or don't like the guy, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, the changes that are going on right now are so historical that there's a lot to be said for owning some nice pieces of real estate. Depending on the tax situation. I'm in California now. There's some bill coming up where we have this Proposition 13 going back to like 1978, and they're talking about taking it away for commercial property, and which in my mind would kill commercial property. And when you look at interest rates, people say, well, interest rates are going up. That's going to be a bad thing for the stock market or a bad thing for the real estate market. And the other side of the equation is, well, real interest rates are going up. That's a good thing because it shows the economy is doing well and people are doing well. So, there's always both sides to an equation when people are looking at things. But as far as different commodities, I mean, I like things that are oversold. The gold mining shares and things like that are tremendously oversold. The uranium shares are almost laughable. They're so oversold. And, those are things that I don't mind sticking my toe in the water at any point at this right now and buying them. I mean, I bought some just the other day. I don't buy, certain stocks I don't believe in, but I tend to lean more towards companies, when you say Eric Sprott, Eric's a huge believer in silver, and I think he's bet a fortune on the silver market. And long term, he's going to be right. I mean, you can make a bet, a long-term bet, and if it doesn't turn out in the right amount of time, it's a bad bet. But he's a very smart man and very long silver. I like all of those. The one thing I like about gold a little more than silver is you can have 10,000 ounces of silver, or $10,000 in silver, and it's like 50 pounds. You can have $10,000 in gold and put it in your top pocket and walk out of the room. So and gold is more of a product that is held by, it's more of real money. It's broken off as like a real currency, where silver is a commodity and it trades up and down based on the environment and based on business and things like that, and shortages and supplies. And gold is broken off as a real currency worldwide. I mean, every country, thinks gold has value going back thousands of years. You go back to the Bible and it says gold, silver, precious stones. I mean, it's always one of those things that has had value. So, for me, I try and figure out what's undervalued and what's going to have a good long-term value, and I start from there, and then I build around that and try and structure around that for my own personal stuff, Frank. I mean, I'm just talking about me personally, and I look at some stuff and they go back, and I think you said something in your email to me about 1985, where it wasn't that long ago, or was that long ago.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, it was the 60s, okay? So I'm 67. I was born in 51, so, I'm in high school in 1967, 68, 69. And World War II was like a million years ago. When you're in high school in the 60s, World War II was something your parents or grandparents were part of. It was like ancient history, but looking back, it was only 20 to 25 years. And so you look back at like 1980 and 85 and stuff like that. That was a long time ago now. I mean, all of a sudden, it was 30, 40, 50 years, and time goes by so quickly that, anyway. Did I answer that
it's
question
a good point.
or not answer that question?
It's a good point, Van, because that's one of the things you told me a few years ago, where you would look at things in 1980. I'm 46, so 1980 is really a long time for me. Like 1970s is really old for me, but when I look at that, it is, you're looking at 3 decades away. So, and so I think he was saying when you see things 1980, like, oh, it's not that long ago, but it actually is when you think about it, right? And I'm glad you compared it to World War II, because it seemed like it was light years away. But that was one of the things that he was saying, where, maybe you've made the mistake where you're ignoring things and saying, oh, it's 1980. But unfortunately, and you say I'm still a young buck, but 46, I feel probably a lot older than you right now. But no, it is interesting to just the time periods. And let's get into real quick. So we've got a few minutes left here. And I don't want to say what are some of the things you see as buys, because some of the things that you see as buys you bought already probably. So, but maybe some of the things that you're finding interesting out there. Is it? And I'm going to be a little broad here, which is going to be tough. But if you're saying like baseball cards, because there's different baseball cards, different qualities, gold coins, where there's I heard you mention Lewis and Clark. Dollars and also $5 liberties. What are some of the areas that you're seeing that is it just gold that you're seeing exceptional value in for someone who has like a longer than a decade or longer time frame?
Well, the coin market. So if we started there, because that's what I do all day, that market is broken into 3 or 4 different marketplaces. And you have the very high-end stuff, and now you have a group of wealthy billionaires who are stepping in saying, I don't need 1,000 coins. I want 50 or 100 of the rarest, or 25 or 50 of the rarest. And there's a couple guys out there who are doing complete collections of one of every coin in the highest quality and stuff like that. So the really rare, expensive items have moved up quite a bit. I'm talking about 6- and 7-figure coins have moved up quite a bit in price. The generic, or the coins that have always been collectible, and I'll use MS65. So let me go back to grading standard. The grading standard on coins goes from 1 to 70, 70 being perfect. And when it goes, you'll see like good, very good, fine, very fine, extra fine, almost uncirculated, and then brilliant uncirculated. Well, brilliant uncirculated starts at 60, and it's called MS, original mint state. MS 60, 61, 62, 63, all the way to 70. So there's 11 different grades of brilliant uncirculated. The grades for collectible grades is usually MS 65 is kind of the magic number for coins after 1850. Coins prior to 1850 brilliant uncirculated 63, 64 are incredible coins. I mean, I have a 1795 $5 gold piece in MS65, MS63. And you look at that coin, I mean, they made a little over 5,000 coins. It was the first U.S. gold coin ever struck in the United States. They made a little over 5,000 coins. You had guys like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson in the room while the coins were being struck, because that was a point where when countries made their own gold coins, it was a big statement to the rest of the world saying, we are our own free nation. Here's what we're producing, our own coinage. So, but let me get back to the generic coins. So you have a group of coins that have been collected for over 100 years, which are like $2.50 gold pieces, $5 gold pieces. I'm talking Liberties and Indians. They were usually struck from around 1838 to 1933. They changed around 1907 to 1908 between the Liberties and the Indians. $10 Indians, $10 Liberties. These coins are incredibly desirable coins, very, very popular. And I think one of the most underpriced areas of the market. I mean, a $10 Liberty 20 years ago was $18,500. Today it's about $2,800 to $3,000, because nobody's focused on it. All the money's gone to the 6 and 7 figure coins, and people haven't been buying that area of the market because people have been running the price of stocks up and running the price of real estate up. So money has shifted for a while. Well, money will shift back. Money always goes back to its rightful owners, or where the market's the most underpriced. And I think we're going to see a shift back to that type of product. Same thing with Mint State 65 Morgan dollars. You know, here are coins that were struck from 1878 to 1904, and then they stopped, and then in 1921 they made them again, and then in 1921 they made the peace dollar. All of those silver dollars are the most recognized coins on earth. I mean, it's the most popular silver coin made in any country in the world. So that's another area of coins that aren't six figures, but are coins that are, you know, several $1,000s. And then you have kind of a mid-range area where you have rare gold coins and the 19th century type coins, which are silver coins struck from 1796 up to about 1905. These include Charles Barber dimes, quarters, half dollars, Liberty seeded half dimes, quarters, half dollars, and dollars. In high grades of MS 65 and 66, to me, are one of the most underpriced areas of the market. If you look at my personal portfolio of coins, which for a poor little coin dealer like me is very significant, I'd say 70% of the money is actually in 19th century type coins, because I'm there because I feel like it's the best value. I look at them and I scratch my head and I think, well, I'd rather have this than the $500 I have in my pocket, or I'd rather have this coin than the $10,000 I have in my pocket or my bank account. There comes a point where when you're willing to trade because something is so underpriced that an old-time collector like me can't help but add to my collection, you start to realize it's a pretty good value. So, and then there's the new modern things, which I'm not a big fan of. You know, like I say, I'm not going to be here in 40 or 50 years, and everything that they're making today is going to be saved, and it's still all going to be in new condition, proof 68 or proof 69 or something in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. So there's a lot of people that love it. A lot of people like it, you know, and it's a great collectible, and there's a huge marketplace for it. It's just not what I personally put my money into. So I like the underpriced areas on things that are very popular, very oversold, very unpopular at this time, and look like the market's starting to move and turn around and go back into a bull market.
So, Van, if people want to learn more about you, get more information, because, you know, and I described this to you, what were you talking about? You mentioned the 1980s before. He's just, you know, usually I'll email a couple of topics, just, you know, for guests when they decide to come on. But, you know, when, you know, you just coming on, it's just, you know, it's kind of like, you know, for me, I'm honored. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how could they do that? Because I know you have davidhall.com, which is, and you can sign up for a free mailing list. But if people want to learn more about this, and what I was getting to before is, you know, we're talking, most of my audience is US based. And I know when you have conferences, a lot, the mining industry is, you know, mostly Canadian. You go in Toronto, Vancouver and stuff like that. But in the US, people are looking to diversify with stocks at all time highs, where when you're looking at the mining industry, you know, those people, it's hard to raise money. It's difficult. It's an industry that's out of favor. But I know that you probably get a lot of business of people looking to buy some collectibles. So how can they do that if they wanted to get in touch with you other than going to your website?
Well, it's easy. They can email me at van@davidhall.com or call me at 1-800-759-7575. You just have to be patient with me, because like I say, I've got 4 people who work here. It isn't a big warehouse. I don't have a bunch of people to call you back and sell you stuff. You'll be talking to me. If you're talking about rare coins, you'll be talking to me. If you want to buy bullion, bags of silver, the old 20. Oh, that's the other thing. You got a second on the $20 gold pieces?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Okay. People want to know what's the best way to buy gold right now, and my business partner just wrote it up, and I told most everybody this a year or so ago, and I absolutely believe it. The $20 gold pieces that were struck from 1849 to 1933 in circulated, beat-up condition, coins that are not new, coins that actually went through circulation, for the last 30 or 40 years, 95% of the time would trade at 75 to 125% over the spot price of gold. So if you had a $20 gold piece and gold was $400 an ounce, they were selling at about $800 a coin. Today, they're selling at about 4% or 5% over the spot price of gold. The premiums have come down, and the reason that happened, Frank, was when gold became $1,900 an ounce several years ago, 1850 to 1900, so much of it came out of Europe, and so much of it became discovered in Europe. Most people don't realize all the U.S. gold coins are in Europe and South America, and thousands of them come in every week into our grading service. And to get graded, because there's U.S. dealers who go to Europe just to buy coins. That's why we have an office in Paris, just to grade $20 gold pieces. But right now, the premium on the $20 gold pieces is extremely low, the lowest I've ever seen it. So I think if gold stays where it is, let's say it's $1,300 an ounce, and you can buy these coins at a small premium to that, and you run the potential of the premium going back to 75 or 125% over the spot price of gold. So if gold does nothing, you have more leverage in that place. The other side of it is when President Roosevelt outlawed gold in 1933, he classified the old U.S. gold coins as collector coins, and they were never confiscated. Now, the general public wasn't aware of this, and most of them turned their gold coins in. But you have, I guess, what you would look at as a case law, not by some judge out of Burbank, California, but by the President of the United States, that's not 5 years old, it's 90 years old, saying, this is not a gold bullion product. So a lot of clients who buy gold have a fear of gold being confiscated. Jim Rickards, who I know you're friends with, talks about them not necessarily confiscating gold, but at some point putting a windfall profits tax on gold bullion of 98 or 99%. Well, this isn't classified as gold bullion. It's classified as a collectible by the U.S. government. This is all what attorneys have told me. I'm not a lawyer, so you'll have to check with your own lawyers and stuff. But to me, it's a real safe bet. And even my son, who I had bought some U.S. Eagles for and Krugerrands and Maple Leafs and stuff when he was young, I had him trade all of them for $20 gold pieces because it's just a really wonderful trade right now. So that's the best way in my mind to buy gold bullion right now. My business partner David says it's like it's like you're picking up free money off the street. He's adamant about it. He just wrote an article on it, which one of these days I'll get up on my website, hopefully in the next week or so when I get to it. But there's times where you look at things and go, "This is stupid." I mean, this is just so underpriced it doesn't make any sense.
No, I love it, and thanks so much for sharing that recommendation right before you leave, which is great because my audience loves recommendations. They just want to be open to new areas to invest and definitely diversify. So I think you really helped them out today. So I really appreciate it, Van. I know how busy your schedule is and traveling and conferences and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and hopefully you join us again soon.
I appreciate it very much, Frank. Thank you.
Okay, it's great stuff from Van. I'm providing his phone number and everything. He's someone that I trust. I do not get paid a dime, so if you want to use him, don't. It's just very difficult to find someone that you trust when it comes to this industry, rare coins, collectibles. I mean, you see them everywhere, pawn shops and different things, and we sell gold and buy gold and stuff like that and all kinds of things. You really don't know what you're getting. He's been a trusted source for me. He's been great. If you think of the industry he's in, which two things I find funny is he's never been sued, which is kind of amazing. Every Fortune 500 company obviously has gone through lawsuits and stuff, but in that business, it just goes to show you how he's someone that people trust, and that word gets out to the biggest people in the world. And he's just very honest. If he thinks that it's something you shouldn't buy, he'll tell you. And he even said it. He's just not a good salesman because he's honest with people, and he just says this is what I'm doing. So for me, I followed him, and he took me to different art dealers. So I bought art from different sources, and again, we're talking about like one of the best in the world who knows the people that the artists go to or the families go to when, say, the artist may pass away in a few years. And what the artist does and what their family does is they'll take all their paintings and this is the person that writes books on them. This way they come out because, I'm not saying anything bad here, but if, something becomes rare and a collectible if it can't be reproduced. So if someone paints and they have a nice, they could continue to paint. If you have a LeBron James jersey, I think I mentioned, during the interview, or Magic Johnson jersey, those guys could sign 50 million jerseys right now. Right. So when an artist dies, that's it. Those paintings, you're never going to see them again from that person, obviously. And having those kind of contacts and being able to buy some of this stuff, not that I'm wishing that the person I bought the painting from is going to pass away, but this is what they do. I mean, these are people who are 70, 80, maybe 90 years old, and they say, okay, look, I want to create, this big book of all of our paintings, and maybe they have 100, 150 paintings in there, just based on this one person, this one artist. He's taken me to some of the best sports collectors out there. I remember Pete Rose signed 100 or 200 baseballs saying, sorry, I bet on baseball that this guy had. I was able to buy a baseball bat from Van Simmons, which I think there's 300 in circulation, and I got lucky because I was in his office with a friend, but it's a baseball bat signed by Ted Williams before they froze him. So I think it's one of 300. So things that are cool where he said, buy what you like. And it makes sense because a lot of people are like, well, I just want gold coins or I want this. But if you buy like something like a nice painting, it makes sense where not only could it increase in value times whatever over a 20, 30-year period, at least it's on your wall. You like looking at it or, whatever it is. But make sure it's something that you're into. And if it is, you're going to enjoy it. And you can see the research behind it, where the history lessons he was telling us about. And you really start learning about these things and it becomes addicting. So for me, it's a big part of my portfolio. 7-8% of just paintings and sports memorabilia and stuff, and I'm going to try to meet with him because I'm going to the San Francisco conference, which is Marin's mining conference, and I believe it's in mid-October. And I'm going to catch up with Van. And he's going to do the same thing. He's going to take me to all the sources. We're going to hang out, and if I could take him out to dinner, he never really lets me pay for too much because he's just a nice guy. He usually takes me to his house and his mom cooks and stuff, but he really helped me out tremendously, and it's just a great source. And that's what this educational segment's about. Because what do we have? We have the markets at all-time highs, and rule of thumb, you don't really want to sell stocks when they're at all-time highs, believe it or not, because you're never going to catch it. But usually they tend to run higher and higher, a lot higher. If you look at the NASDAQ, and this market's not even close to being compared to the NASDAQ back in during the 2000 basically tech bubble, where we saw, I believe it was 100% gains from 1999 to 2000. So we had tremendous gains in the NASDAQ up to pretty much from 95 to 98. But people forget, like once we hit 1999 and everybody started getting nervous, the markets went up another 100% since then. We have Morgan Stanley that just came out today, increased the price target on Amazon to 2,500, increased that price target, I believe, by another 20% on Google. These stocks are doing well, and our valuations are much cheaper, 16, 17 times valuation here on the PE compared to 40 plus when the bubble burst in the NASDAQ. So it's a lot different. Not saying stocks can't come down, but it's a good time to really take some of those profits out and maybe diversify a little bit. Buy some things that you might want to leave your kids or things that you're going to love. You got sports fans out there, whatever it is. But you highlight, like, buy something that you like, and you want to make sure that even with coins that he's looking at, rare coins, and again, the MS from 0 to 70, and I know he explained that, the MS 65 to 70s are the ones that you want, 70 being the best. He sees discounts in these things all the time. Things that were going for $40,000 that you could buy for $2,000, $3,000. These are things he buys, he holds on to, and has made an incredible living by being smart and doing the right thing for his clients. And that's why he's at all these conferences, one of the most highly recommended people. And what I love about Van is this wasn't given to him. And this is something that he earned, he built. And that's what I love. I think he was a policeman before this, 40 years, 45 years ago. And just this was his passion, and he built it from scratch. So he understands. And the reason why it's important is because whenever you see his booths at these mining conferences, he's talking to just average folks like you, like me, like just hanging out and explaining things. Like he loves it. He loves teaching. So don't call him to talk his ear off and just say, hey, it's an amazing, amazing source. And if this is something that you're interested in, he's a great source. And I want to hear back from you. Again, I don't get paid for recommending him. He's a friend. He's someone I trust. And by listening to this podcast, I share some of my sources. With my newsletter subscribers, you see a lot more where I share a lot of my sources with you, which I've built over the past 25 years, especially from interviewing people on this podcast. But getting back to diversifying alternative assets, it's not just coins, sports cars, rare stamps, rugs, American Indian rugs he was talking about. I mean, it could be shares in startups that you might want to put a little bit in there. I think internationally would be a great investment. I mean, how many people have told us to invest internationally over the past 6-7 years? And thank God I didn't have too many of these people on my podcast because they've been dead wrong. And the U.S. has been great. But there is one guy that I listen to that's been fantastic that I know does the research. And that's Kim Iskian. And that's someone who I've interviewed in the past. It's amazing. He gets, the page, I don't want to say page views, but more listeners, spiked to the roof when I interviewed him. I interviewed him, I think about 2 months ago. I'll have him on pretty soon, but he's a good friend. It's an International Capitalist newsletter, and it's a newsletter I like to read, and because he's everywhere. I see his picture in a crazy country, and he's talking to just regular folks and saying what you need to do, what you need to avoid, why this is good, why Russia's bad right now. But he's in all of these areas, and he'll take some of his subscribers on these journeys with him and tell them, what they have to be careful. And listen, if you're going to go to Argentina, don't go here. You can get robbed. So he knows all this stuff, but it's just really interesting. But that's one guy that I listen to. Van's a guy that I listen to with collectibles. And if you want to use these guys, that's fine. But these are the people that I want to try to put in front of you when I interview your podcast going forward, because right now where the markets are, it's a really good time to just take a little bit of profits, be smart. I think the market's going to go a little bit higher here. There is risk to earnings in the next few quarters. Like I said, in the next 6 months, we could see a pullback 6 months from now. But over the next 3 months or so, I think we're going to continue to see this thing ramp higher. And, just by technical levels alone. But, again, you don't want to try to time the market. I have no idea where the market's going to go. Nobody does. But you guys probably did pretty good on a lot of stocks, a lot of things I recommend on the podcast, stocks that I have in my newsletters and stuff, or in general, the overall market. But take some of that and start looking into things like this, and do it when you're young. And who wants to learn about art? Like, some people like art, really? I mean, if you're into art when you're young, it's cool. And I could see you being into art when you're older. But for me, I wasn't really into it. And what I just learned, started researching, it was incredible. And you said to buy some of these paintings, it was, they're beautiful, like hanging in my walls of my house and stuff like that. So just learning about this stuff is not going to hurt, even if you don't buy it. But you have to buy things for thousands and thousands of dollars, but just start diversifying a little bit. And if you get lucky and you get something that could be really, really valuable, like 30 years from now, something you buy for like $1,000, that could be worth $100,000 or $1 million. Who knows? But I just think it's worth diversifying, especially international stocks. That includes private shares in startups if you want. It's not a bad idea. Precious metals, they say. Precious metals have been crushed. I wouldn't really call that an alternative investment, but rare stamps, again, it's something. Van showed me his $2 million stamp once in his safe, which was amazing. But he doesn't really do too much with stamps, rare coins, sports cards, and stuff like that. But guys, try to diversify. All right. Please don't have that ego like you're a god and the stocks are up and I told you so, because this market, it happens. I've been through this 25 years. I had that ego. And when you live through 2008, 2009, when you lived through 2000, when I actually lived through the 1987 market crash, where that was one of the things my dad called in writing, and just to see how many people got destroyed. And we saw the markets come back after all of these. But when you go through those moments, you realize that the market could just slap you in the face really quick. So don't have that ego. Remember, it's the stocks are doing great. Everybody looks like a genius right now. So be smart. Diversify, even buy some real estate maybe. Yes, prices are high, but try to get good deals if you can, but try to diversify. Very, very important. Not too much of your money, maybe 5-6%. Obviously, if you're going to buy real estate, it's going to be much more than that. But I think now's a really, really good opportunity to diversify. And I'm going to start putting a lot of people on this podcast to interview, a lot of people in front of you that are going to give you some great ideas on exactly how to do that. So, guys, if you like that segment, feel free. Let me know. If not, it's fine. Frank at CurzioResearch.com. I welcome all kinds of feedback. That's Frank at CurzioResearch.com. And that's it for me. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you guys in 7 days. Take care.
The information presented on Wall Street Unplugged is the opinion of its hosts and guests. You should not base your investment decisions solely on this broadcast. Remember, it's your money and your responsibility. Wall Street Unplugged, produced by the Choose Yourself Podcast Network, the leader in podcasts produced to help you choose yourself.